November 15th, 1944, 800 meters above the Vosges Mountains in eastern France, where morning frost clung to pine branches and the thin air carried the distant rumble of artillery. Private Samuel Washington crouched behind a makeshift barricade of fallen logs, adjusting the supposedly defective telescopic sight that his commanding officer had reluctantly issued him just 3 hours earlier. The German positions across the valley seemed impossibly distant through the clouded lens, yet Washington's weathered hands moved across the rifle with the same precision he had once used to calibrate surveying equipment in the cotton fields of Alabama. What the young soldier from Montgomery didn't know was that within 60 minutes, his name would be whispered, with a mixture of awe and disbelief throughout the entire regiment, fundamentally challenging everything his superiors believed about capability, race, and the true nature of military excellence. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. This is the extraordinary account of how a single hour of precision marksmanship would transform not just the outcome of a critical operation, but the deeply entrenched prejudices of an entire military unit, proving that exceptional skill recognizes no boundaries of color or class. The morning had begun with frustration and barely concealed contempt in the command tent of the 366th Infantry Regiment, a segregated unit that had been fighting its way through the Vosges Mountains for 6 weeks. Major Robert Harrison, a career officer from Georgia whose military bearing couldn't quite mask his deep-seated regional prejudices, stood over a collection of damaged equipment that had been salvaged from recent engagements. Among the recovered items lay a Unertl 8-power telescopic sight, its housing cracked and internal mechanisms visibly misaligned from shrapnel damage sustained during the previous week's advance through the village of Saint-Dié. The telescope had belonged to Staff Sergeant Michael O'Brien, one of the regiment's most accomplished marksmen, who had been evacuated 3 days earlier after sustaining injuries from artillery fragments. O'Brien's departure had left a significant gap in the unit's long-range capabilities, particularly crucial given the tactical situation they now faced. German forces had established defensive positions on the opposite ridge, approximately 800 to 1,000 meters away, where experienced snipers from the elite mountain divisions had been systematically targeting American officers and communications personnel. Captain James Fletcher, Harrison's executive officer and a pragmatic man from Ohio, who had learned to navigate the complex dynamics of commanding segregated units, examined the damaged scope with the practiced eye of someone who understood both the equipment's potential value and the political realities of their situation. The housing showed obvious impact damage along its left side, and when Fletcher peered through the eyepiece, the reticle appeared to drift slightly off-center, suggesting internal mechanisms had been knocked out of alignment. "Sir, we could send this back to Ordnance for proper repair," Fletcher suggested, though both men knew that requisitioning replacement equipment could take weeks, time they simply didn't have given the current tactical situation. Major Harrison picked up the scope, turning it over in his hands while considering their limited options. The morning briefing had made clear that Divisional Command expected the regiment to neutralize the German observation posts within 24 hours, clearing the way for a broader advance toward the Rhine River Valley. Without effective counter-sniper capabilities, American casualties would continue mounting at an unacceptable rate. "What about the Negro private who's been asking about marksman training?" Harrison asked, though his tone suggested the question was more theoretical than practical. "Washington, wasn't it?" Fletcher nodded, having reviewed personnel files the previous evening while searching for potential candidates to fill O'Brien's role. Private Samuel Washington had indeed submitted multiple requests for advanced marksmanship training, citing civilian experience with precision shooting during his employment with a surveying company in Alabama. However, regiment policy had consistently relegated African-American soldiers to support roles, despite individual qualifications or expressed interests. "He's shown competency with standard rifle work," Fletcher acknowledged carefully, knowing he was treading into sensitive territory. His qualification scores have been consistently above average, and his previous supervisor in logistics mentioned unusual familiarity with optical equipment. Harrison's expression revealed the internal conflict between military necessity and personal prejudice. The pragmatic requirements of their situation demanded every available resource. Yet decades of social conditioning made the idea of entrusting precision equipment to a black soldier feel fundamentally wrong. The damaged scope provided what seemed like an acceptable compromise, a way to appear responsive to military needs, while ensuring that any failure could be attributed to defective equipment rather than command decisions. "Give him the broken scope," Harrison decided, his voice carrying the tone of someone convincing himself that he was being generous rather than discriminatory. "If he can make something useful out of damaged equipment, maybe there's potential there. If not, we haven't lost anything significant." Fletcher understood the underlying logic, though he privately suspected that Washington's capabilities might surprise everyone involved. During his brief interactions with the private, Fletcher had noticed an intensity and focus that suggested deeper competencies than his current assignment would indicate. Still, questioning the major's decision directly would accomplish nothing productive. 30 minutes later, Private Samuel Washington stood at attention in the command tent, his expression carefully neutral as Major Harrison explained the situation. At 26 years old, Washington possessed the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of precise work under challenging conditions. Before the draft had brought him into military service, he had spent 5 years operating surveying equipment for a civil engineering company, work that had required him to make accurate measurements across distances of up to 2,000 meters using complex optical instruments. Washington's civilian experience had included extensive use of theodolites and transit telescopes, sophisticated surveying tools that demanded precise calibration and the ability to distinguish minute angular differences across significant distances. This background had given him an intuitive understanding of optical mechanics and atmospheric effects on long-range observation, knowledge that translated directly to precision shooting, though he had never mentioned these skills to his military superiors. "Private Washington," Harrison began, his tone carrying the practiced authority of career command. "We have a specialized assignment that requires someone with steady hands and attention to detail." Staff Sergeant O'Brien's equipment became available after his medical evacuation, and we need someone to put it to use against German positions across the valley. Washington accepted the damaged scope with both hands, immediately noticing the weight distribution that indicated internal displacement of optical elements. His trained eye caught the surface scratches and impact damage, but more importantly, his fingers detected subtle mechanical looseness that suggested repairable misalignment rather than fundamental destruction. Years of maintaining delicate surveying instruments had taught him to distinguish between cosmetic damage and functional impairment. "Sir, permission to examine the equipment more thoroughly before deployment," Washington requested, though he phrased it as a question to avoid seeming presumptuous. Harrison's slight frown suggested that he interpreted the request as hesitation or complaint about the equipment's condition. "The scope is what's available, Private. We're not running an equipment inspection. We need results against enemy positions within the next few hours." "Understood, sir," Washington replied, recognizing that further discussion would be counterproductive. His experience with both racial dynamics and military hierarchy had taught him when to press issues and when to demonstrate capability through action rather than explanation. Fletcher provided Washington with a Springfield Model 1903 rifle that had been modified to accept telescopic sights, along with a selection of match-grade ammunition that O'Brien had been using for precision work. The rifle itself was in excellent condition, its barrel showing minimal wear and the bolt action functioning smoothly through its full cycle. Washington's hands moved over the weapon with practiced efficiency, checking headspace and trigger pull weight with the automatic precision of someone familiar with mechanical systems. The damaged scope presented a more complex challenge. As Washington examined the mounting system, he could see that the impact had shifted the internal tube assembly slightly within its housing, causing the reticle to appear off-center when viewed through the eyepiece. However, his experience with surveying instruments suggested that this type of misalignment might be correctable through careful adjustment of the mounting screws and patient recalibration. Washington had grown up in rural Alabama, where his father had worked as a sharecropper on a farm that bordered extensive pine forests. From age 12 onward, Samuel had been responsible for hunting small game to supplement the family's limited food resources, work that had required him to make accurate shots at ranges up to 300 meters using open-sighted rifles. This early training had developed his natural ability to judge distance, wind effect, and atmospheric conditions, skills that had proven valuable during his later work with surveying equipment. More significantly, Washington's surveying experience had taught him to think systematically about optical problems. When theodolites or transits became misaligned, the standard procedure involved careful adjustment of multiple mechanical elements while taking precise measurements to verify accuracy. The damaged rifle scope presented essentially the same type of problem, requiring patience and methodical approach rather than specialized tools or advanced technical knowledge. Working in a quiet corner of the equipment tent, Washington began the delicate process of scope adjustment. He carefully loosened the mounting rings that secured the telescope to the rifle, allowing him to examine the internal tube alignment more closely. The impact had indeed shifted the optical assembly, but the displacement appeared to be primarily lateral rather than longitudinal, suggesting that the fundamental optical elements remained intact. Using a small screwdriver from his maintenance kit, Washington began making minute adjustments to the mounting screws while periodically checking the reticle alignment through the eyepiece. This process required extraordinary patience, as each adjustment had to be followed by a settling period to determine its full effect. Years of surveying work had taught him that rushing optical calibration inevitably led to compounded errors that became increasingly difficult to correct. After 45 minutes of careful adjustment, Washington had managed to bring the reticle back to approximately center position within the field of view. However, true accuracy would require actual range testing, something that would have to wait until he reached his assigned position. The scope's magnification appeared to be functioning correctly, and the clarity of the image, while not perfect due to minor scratches on the objective lens, remained sufficient for precise work at extended ranges. Washington's understanding of ballistics came from a combination of hunting experience and surveying knowledge about atmospheric effects on long-range measurements. During his civilian work, he had learned that temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure could significantly affect the accuracy of optical measurements across distances exceeding 500 meters. These same atmospheric factors influenced bullet trajectory, though the effects were more complex due to the projectile's flight time and changing velocity. The tactical situation Washington was about to enter had been developing for several days. German forces had established observation posts on the ridge opposite the American positions, using the elevation advantage to direct artillery strikes and coordinate defensive movements. These posts were manned by experienced personnel from mountain divisions, soldiers who had been selected specifically for their marksmanship abilities and familiarity with alpine warfare conditions. American attempts to neutralize these positions had been largely unsuccessful, partly due to the challenging range and partly because of the German operators' skill at using natural camouflage and tactical positioning. Previous efforts had relied primarily on indirect fire from mortars and artillery, but the rocky terrain provided excellent protection against explosive effects, and the Germans had proven adept at relocating their positions between bombardments. The German snipers had been particularly effective against American officers and communications personnel, forcing command elements to operate from concealed positions that reduced their ability to coordinate tactical movements. This situation had created a tactical stalemate that divisional command was increasingly eager to resolve, particularly given the broader strategic timeline for advancing toward German industrial areas in the Saar Basin. As Washington prepared to move forward to his assigned position, he conducted a final equipment check with the thoroughness that surveying work had made automatic. The rifle's zero had been set for 200 meters with the previous scope, but the adjustments he had made would require complete recalibration. The match-grade ammunition provided consistent ballistic performance, though atmospheric conditions at their current altitude would affect trajectory in ways that required real-time compensation. Washington's assigned position was a rocky outcropping approximately 600 meters behind the front line. offering clear observation across the valley while providing adequate concealment from German observers. The location had been selected by Staff Sergeant O'Brien before his evacuation, chosen specifically for its commanding view of the suspected German positions and the natural windbreak provided by surrounding rock formations. The approach to the position required Washington to move carefully through terrain that offered minimal concealment, relying on the early morning shadows and German attention being focused on more obvious American positions closer to the front line. His years of hunting in Alabama forests had taught him to move quietly across varied terrain, skills that proved valuable as he navigated the rocky slopes without creating noise that might alert enemy observers. Upon reaching his assigned position, Washington began the systematic process of range estimation and scope calibration that would determine his effectiveness against the German positions. Using techniques learned during surveying work, he identified prominent terrain features at known distances, creating reference points that would allow him to judge ranges accurately throughout the engagement area. The German positions were visible as subtle irregularities in the natural terrain, places where vegetation patterns seemed slightly wrong, or where shadows fell in ways that suggested artificial construction. Washington's experience with optical instruments allowed him to distinguish between natural rock formations and carefully constructed camouflage, identifying at least 3 probable observation posts within effective rifle range. The process of zeroing his rifle with the repaired scope required several carefully placed shots at improvised targets, adjustments that had to be made while avoiding detection by German observers who would certainly investigate any obvious shooting activity. Washington used natural terrain features as backstops, selecting targets that would minimize the visual and auditory signatures of his calibration work. During this process, Washington discovered that his repairs had been more successful than initially apparent. The scope's tracking proved to be remarkably consistent, with mechanical adjustments translating predictably into point-of-impact changes. While the optical clarity wasn't perfect due to the surface damage, the functional accuracy was more than adequate for precision work at the ranges involved. Washington's first opportunity to demonstrate his capabilities came when movement in the German positions indicated a changing of personnel, probably the routine rotation of observation teams that occurred every few hours. Through his repaired scope, he could identify individual figures moving between concealed positions, though positive identification of specific threats required patience and careful observation. The tactical situation called for disruption of German observation capabilities rather than simple elimination of individual personnel. Washington's surveying background had taught him to think systematically about problems, considering how individual actions contributed to broader objectives. Rather than taking random shots, he needed to identify and neutralize the most critical German positions in a sequence that would maximize tactical advantage while minimizing his own exposure. German Mountain Division personnel were known for their exceptional training and experience with alpine warfare conditions. These soldiers had been selected from elite units and trained specifically for operations in difficult terrain at extended ranges. Their equipment included high-quality optical instruments and precision rifles that made them formidable opponents for conventional infantry approaches. However, Washington's unique background provided certain advantages that conventional military training might not have developed. His surveying experience had taught him to make accurate measurements under challenging conditions, skills that translated directly to range estimation and atmospheric compensation. More importantly, his work had required the kind of patience and systematic thinking that precision shooting demanded. As Washington settled into position for his first engagement, he drew upon hunting techniques learned during his Alabama childhood, methods for remaining motionless for extended periods, while maintaining alertness for subtle changes in the environment. This mental discipline, combined with his technical knowledge of optical systems, created a combination of skills that few soldiers possessed. The morning air was crisp and relatively still, conditions that favored accuracy at extended ranges. Washington had learned during surveying work that atmospheric density affected optical measurements, and the same principles applied to ballistic performance. The cool temperature would increase air density, slightly affecting bullet trajectory in predictable ways that could be compensated through scope adjustments. Washington's first shot was intended as much for final scope verification as tactical effect. He had identified a German observation post approximately 820 meters distant, where movement patterns suggested the presence of optical equipment being used for American position surveillance. The target area was partially concealed behind natural rock formations, requiring precise placement to achieve effective results. Taking careful aim through his repaired scope, Washington applied the breathing and trigger control techniques that hunting experience had made automatic. The shot broke cleanly, and through his telescope he could observe the immediate effect on German activity in the target area. Movement ceased abruptly, suggesting that his shot had achieved the intended disruption of enemy observation capabilities. More significantly, the bullet impact was exactly where Washington had intended it, confirming that his scope repairs had been successful and that his range estimation was accurate. This precision gave him confidence to engage additional targets with the aggressive timing that tactical success would require. German response to the first shot was immediate and professional. Within seconds, Washington could observe movement in multiple positions as enemy personnel attempted to locate the source of the American fire. However, his position had been well chosen, and the natural terrain features provided effective concealment from return observation. Washington's second engagement target was a communications position approximately 750 meters away, where German personnel appeared to be operating radio equipment for coordination with artillery units. Disrupting these communications would reduce the enemy's ability to direct indirect fire against American positions, providing immediate tactical benefit beyond the psychological effect of accurate long-range shooting. The second shot again achieved precise placement, and Washington could observe the immediate disruption of German communications activity. Enemy personnel moved quickly to alternate positions, but their coordinated movement patterns indicated that command and control capabilities had been significantly degraded. By this point, German forces were clearly aware that they faced an accurate long-range threat, but their response indicated confusion about the source and nature of the American capability. Previous American shooting had been less precise, and the sudden appearance of accurate fire from an unexpected direction created tactical problems that required time to resolve. Washington's third engagement was against what appeared to be a German sniper position approximately 900 meters distant, where he had observed the characteristic glint of optical equipment being used for observation of American positions. This target represented the greatest challenge in terms of range and target size, requiring absolute precision in both range estimation and atmospheric compensation. The mathematics of long-range shooting involve complex calculations about bullet trajectory, atmospheric effects, and target movement. But Washington's approach relied more on intuitive understanding, developed through years of practical experience. His surveying work had taught him to make accurate measurements across similar distances under varying atmospheric conditions, knowledge that translated directly to the ballistic calculations required for precision shooting. Washington's third shot required additional compensation for the increased range and the slight crosswind that had developed as morning temperatures began rising. Drawing upon hunting experience with Alabama wind patterns, he estimated the atmospheric effect and adjusted his point of aim accordingly. The shot achieved the intended effect, and German activity in that position ceased immediately. The psychological impact of Washington's shooting was becoming apparent in the German response patterns. Enemy movement had become much more cautious, with personnel limiting their exposure and communications activity reduced to minimal levels. This behavioral change indicated that the tactical objective of disrupting German observation capabilities was being achieved through individual marksmanship rather than overwhelming firepower. Washington's fourth engagement was against a forward observation post that had been directing German artillery fire against American positions throughout the previous week. This target was approximately 850 meters away and partially concealed behind constructed camouflage, requiring careful observation to identify the precise location of enemy personnel. Through his repaired scope, Washington could observe subtle movement patterns that indicated the presence of multiple German personnel in the target area. However, Effective engagement required identification of the specific individuals responsible for fire direction, targets that would maximize tactical benefit while demonstrating the precision capabilities that were clearly affecting German morale. Washington's fourth shot was fired with the same careful preparation as the previous engagements, taking into account the slightly changed atmospheric conditions as morning temperatures continued rising. The bullet placement was again precise, and the immediate cessation of German artillery direction indicated that the engagement had achieved its intended tactical objective. German attempts to locate Washington's position were becoming more systematic, with enemy personnel using optical equipment to scan potential American positions for signs of sniper activity. However, Washington's concealment remained effective, and his careful selection of shooting positions minimized the visual signatures that might reveal his location to German observers. The cumulative effect of Washington's engagements was becoming apparent in the broader tactical situation. German observation and fire direction capabilities had been significantly reduced, allowing American units to move more freely and operate with reduced concern about directed artillery fire. This tactical advantage represented exactly the kind of result that divisional command had been seeking through conventional approaches. Washington's fifth engagement was against what appeared to be a German command position approximately 780 meters away, where enemy personnel had been observing American movements and apparently coordinating defensive activities. The target area was well concealed and required careful observation to identify the precise location of command personnel. Through patient observation, Washington identified movement patterns that indicated the presence of senior German personnel directing tactical activities. His fifth shot was placed with the same precision as the previous engagements, achieving immediate disruption of enemy command and control activities in that sector. By this point, approximately 55 minutes had elapsed since Washington's first engagement, and the tactical situation had changed dramatically. German observation and coordination capabilities had been reduced to minimal effectiveness, creating opportunities for American tactical advantage that had not existed earlier in the morning. The broader implications of Washington's performance were beginning to register with American personnel who had observed the engagements. Radio communications indicated growing awareness that exceptional marksmanship was being demonstrated from an unexpected source, though most observers remained unaware of Washington's identity or the circumstances surrounding his equipment assignment. Major Harrison, monitoring tactical communications from the command post, was receiving increasingly detailed reports about the effectiveness of American counter-sniper operations. The consistent accuracy and rapid succession of successful engagements suggested capabilities that exceeded anything the regiment had demonstrated previously, creating questions about the source of this sudden improvement. Captain Fletcher, who had been observing German positions through field glasses, could see the dramatic change in enemy behavior patterns. German movement had become extremely cautious, communications activity was clearly reduced, and the coordinated observation that had characterized enemy operations throughout the previous week had been effectively disrupted. Washington's sixth and final engagement of the hour was against a German position that had been attempting to re-establish communications with artillery units. Located approximately 840 meters away, this target represented the enemy's attempt to restore the coordination capabilities that Washington's previous shots had disrupted. Through his scope, Washington could observe German personnel working with radio equipment, apparently trying to re-establish contact with supporting units. His final shot of the engagement was placed with the same precision that had characterized all his previous work, effectively ending German attempts to restore tactical coordination during the immediate time period. As the hour concluded, Washington conducted a systematic observation of the German positions to assess the cumulative effect of his work. Enemy activity had been reduced to minimal levels, with no observable attempts at coordinated observation or fire direction. The tactical objective of disrupting German capabilities had been achieved through individual marksmanship in a way that conventional approaches had failed to accomplish. The psychological impact on German personnel was evident in their movement patterns and activity levels. The sudden appearance of accurate long-range fire from an unexpected direction had created tactical problems that would require significant time and resources to resolve. This disruption provided American forces with operational opportunities that had not existed earlier in the morning. Washington's ammunition expenditure for the engagement had been remarkably efficient, 6 rounds fired, with each shot achieving its intended tactical objective. This economy of fire demonstrated not only exceptional accuracy, but also the kind of tactical thinking that maximized results while minimizing resource consumption and exposure to enemy response. As Washington prepared to withdraw from his position, he conducted a final equipment check that confirmed the continued functionality of his repaired scope. The optical adjustments had held throughout the engagement, and the mechanical systems had performed consistently despite the damage the equipment had sustained. This reliability validated his civilian experience with optical instruments and the systematic approach he had taken to the repair process. The return journey to American positions required the same careful movement that had characterized Washington's earlier approach. German personnel were clearly alert for American sniper activity, but their attention remained focused on obvious positions closer to the front line rather than the concealed location Washington had selected for his engagement. Upon reaching the command post, Washington was immediately directed to report to Major Harrison for debriefing about his morning's activities. The regiment's senior officers had been monitoring tactical communications throughout the engagement period, and the consistent reports of successful counter-sniper operations had created significant interest in the source of these capabilities. Major Harrison's expression as Washington entered the command tent revealed a complex mixture of surprise, skepticism, and reluctant admiration. The tactical results were undeniable. German observation and coordination capabilities had been effectively neutralized through individual marksmanship, but the source of these capabilities challenged fundamental assumptions about military competence and racial characteristics. Private Washington, Harrison began, his tone carefully controlled. We've received extensive reports about American sniper activity this morning. Were you able to make effective use of the equipment you were provided? Washington's response was characteristically understated, reflecting both military discipline and the racial dynamics that required careful navigation. Yes, sir, the scope functioned adequately after some adjustment. I was able to engage 6 German positions at ranges between 750 and 900 meters, with apparent success in disrupting enemy observation activities. Fletcher, who had been coordinating with forward observers throughout the morning, provided additional detail about the tactical impact. Sir, German artillery direction has been essentially eliminated, and their coordination capabilities appear to have been significantly degraded. American units report much greater freedom of movement and reduced indirect fire. Harrison examined the damaged scope that Washington had returned, noting that the equipment appeared to be functioning normally despite its obvious battle damage. The implications of Washington's performance created cognitive dissonance between observed results and preconceived notions about capabilities and racial characteristics. "Walk me through your shooting sequence," Harrison requested, though his tone suggested professional interest rather than personal curiosity. Washington provided a systematic account of his morning's work, describing target identification, range estimation, atmospheric compensation, and tactical decision-making with the precision that surveying experience had made automatic. His technical vocabulary and analytical approach revealed depth of knowledge that surprised both officers, challenging their assumptions about his educational background and professional competence. As Washington described his adjustment of the damaged scope, Fletcher began to understand the technical skills that had enabled the morning's success. The systematic approach to optical repair and calibration required knowledge and experience that extended well beyond conventional military training, suggesting civilian background that hadn't been reflected in Washington's personnel file. Harrison's questions about range estimation and atmospheric compensation revealed Washington's understanding of ballistic principles and optical effects that were typically associated with specialized military training or advanced civilian experience. The mathematical precision of his tactical thinking contradicted stereotypes about educational limitations and intellectual capacity. The broader tactical implications of Washington's performance were becoming clear to both officers. The regiment now possessed counter-sniper capabilities that exceeded anything they had demonstrated previously, potentially changing the tactical balance in their sector and creating opportunities for operations that had been too risky under constant German observation. However, the racial dynamics of the situation created complex command challenges. Washington's exceptional performance demanded recognition and appropriate utilization, but military policies and personal prejudices created obstacles to acknowledging and leveraging these capabilities effectively. Fletcher, whose Ohio background had provided somewhat different perspectives on racial issues, privately recognized that Washington's abilities represented a significant tactical asset that should be developed and utilized to maximum advantage. However, advocating for Washington's advancement required careful navigation of both official policies and Harrison's personal attitudes. The conversation was interrupted by radio communications from divisional headquarters requesting immediate reports on the morning's counter-sniper operations. Higher command had apparently received multiple reports about successful American shooting and wanted detailed information about capabilities and personnel involved. Harrison faced the uncomfortable situation of having to explain that exceptional military performance had been achieved by equipment and personnel that he had relegated to secondary status due to racial prejudices. The tactical success was undeniable, but acknowledging its source required admitting errors in judgment about capabilities and assignments. Washington stood at attention during the radio conversation, maintaining military discipline while observing the complex dynamics his performance had created. Years of navigating racial restrictions in both civilian and military environments had taught him to recognize when his capabilities created uncomfortable political situations for authority figures. The divisional commander's questions about specific personnel and equipment revealed growing higher-level interest in replicating the morning's success across broader operations. This attention created both opportunities and risks for Washington, whose exceptional performance could lead either to advancement or to renewed efforts to limit his role to avoid challenging established hierarchies. As the immediate debriefing concluded, Harrison was left with the uncomfortable recognition that his prejudices had nearly prevented the tactical success that divisional command was now praising. Washington's performance with supposedly defective equipment had exceeded anything achieved by previously designated specialists, forcing reconsideration of assumptions about capability and merit. Fletcher privately approached Washington after the formal debriefing, recognizing that the morning's events had created opportunities that required careful handling to maximize benefit while avoiding political complications. Washington's technical skills and tactical judgment clearly warranted advancement, but achieving recognition would require strategic navigation of military politics. The afternoon brought additional tactical developments that further demonstrated the impact of Washington's morning work. German artillery fire against American positions had decreased dramatically, and enemy coordination appeared to remain disrupted despite several hours for reorganization. This sustained tactical advantage suggested that Washington's engagements had achieved effects beyond immediate target neutralization. Forward observers reported that German personnel movements remained cautious and limited, indicating continued concern about American sniper capabilities. This behavioral change provided American units with freedom of action that had been absent during the previous weeks of operations in the Vosges Mountains. Intelligence reports suggested that German command was reallocating resources to address the apparent improvement in American counter-sniper capabilities. This reallocation represented tactical success beyond the immediate effects of target engagement, as enemy resources were being diverted from offensive operations to defensive measures. Washington spent the afternoon conducting additional equipment maintenance and preparing for potential follow-up operations. His systematic approach to scope adjustment and rifle maintenance reflected the professional habits developed during his civilian surveying career, attention to detail that maximized equipment reliability under field conditions. The damaged scope continued to function effectively throughout the day, validating Washington's repair work and his understanding of optical mechanical systems. This continued performance provided confidence for future operations, while demonstrating capabilities that extended beyond conventional military training. Evening brought informal recognition from other soldiers in the regiment who had observed the dramatic change in tactical conditions. While official recognition remained complicated by racial policies, individual respect for exceptional performance began overcoming some of the prejudices that had previously limited Washington's opportunities. Staff Sergeant O'Brien, who had returned from medical evacuation earlier than expected, sought out Washington to discuss the morning's events. O'Brien's professional interest in marksmanship created common ground that transcended racial barriers, leading to technical discussions about equipment and technique that provided mutual benefit. O'Brien's examination of the repaired scope revealed the sophistication of Washington's adjustment work, technical competence that earned professional respect from an experienced specialist. This recognition represented progress toward the kind of merit-based evaluation that military effectiveness ultimately required. The conversation between Washington and O'Brien also revealed the civilian background that had prepared Washington for precision shooting. O'Brien's questions about surveying experience and optical equipment led to discussions about technical knowledge that most military personnel lacked, explaining the source of Washington's exceptional capabilities. As evening progressed, Captain Fletcher conducted an informal assessment of tactical developments throughout the day. The sustained improvement in American operational freedom clearly resulted from the morning's counter-sniper work, providing measurable tactical advantage that justified continued utilization of Washington's capabilities. Fletcher's analysis also considered the broader implications of Washington's performance for military policies about racial integration and capability assessment. The morning's events had demonstrated that individual merit could exceed institutional expectations, challenging fundamental assumptions about military organization and personnel utilization. Major Harrison spent the evening reviewing reports and considering his response to divisional inquiries about replicating the day's tactical success. His personal prejudices remained largely unchanged, but military necessity required acknowledgement of Washington's capabilities and their strategic value to ongoing operations. The divisional commander's continued interest in counter-sniper capabilities created pressure for systematic development of these skills across broader units. This attention provided opportunities for Washington's advancement while creating risks that his exceptional performance might be attributed to equipment improvements rather than individual competence. Night brought additional German attempts to re-establish observation and coordination capabilities, efforts that provided Washington with opportunities to demonstrate sustained effectiveness under different tactical conditions. His evening engagements confirmed that the morning's success represented consistent capability rather than exceptional circumstances. Washington's night shooting required additional technical considerations about optical performance under reduced light conditions and atmospheric changes that affected ballistic calculations. His successful adaptation to these challenges demonstrated tactical flexibility that complemented his technical accuracy. The sustained tactical advantage achieved through individual marksmanship began attracting attention from other regimental commanders, creating pressure for Washington's temporary assignment to support operations in adjacent sectors. This interest represented recognition of his exceptional capabilities while creating opportunities for broader impact. However, the racial dynamics of temporary assignment remained complex, as Washington's attachment to other units would require explanation and justification that many commanders preferred to avoid. The tactical value was clear, but institutional barriers remained significant obstacles to effective utilization. Washington's own perspective on these developments reflected his understanding of both the opportunities and limitations created by exceptional performance within segregated military structure. His civilian experience had taught him to focus on professional competence while navigating social restrictions that limited full recognition of capabilities. The following morning brought new tactical challenges that provided additional opportunities for Washington to demonstrate his abilities. German forces had attempted overnight repositioning to restore observation capabilities, creating targets for continued counter-sniper operations while testing Washington's ability to adapt to changing enemy tactics. Washington's target identification and range estimation under different atmospheric conditions confirmed his understanding of environmental effects on both optical performance and ballistic calculations. His systematic approach to new challenges demonstrated professional competence that extended beyond individual accuracy to tactical thinking and adaptive capability. The second day's shooting confirmed that Washington's performance represented consistent skill rather than exceptional circumstances. His accuracy remained high despite equipment limitations and challenging tactical conditions, providing continued tactical advantage while building confidence in his reliable capabilities. German response to continued accurate American shooting indicated growing concern about counter-sniper capabilities and increasing allocation of resources to defensive measures. This response validated the tactical impact of individual marksmanship while demonstrating effects that extended beyond immediate target engagement. Major Harrison's reporting to divisional headquarters acknowledged Washington's exceptional performance while carefully managing racial implications that complicated official recognition. The tactical results were undeniable, but acknowledging their source required navigation of military policies and social attitudes that remained obstacles to full utilization. Captain Fletcher's advocacy for Washington's advancement represented evolving recognition of merit-based evaluation within military necessity. Fletcher's Ohio background and pragmatic command style enabled him to focus on tactical effectiveness while working to overcome institutional barriers that limited individual advancement. The regiment's other officers began developing grudging respect for Washington's capabilities as tactical advantages continued accumulating through sustained performance. Professional recognition slowly overcame racial prejudices as military effectiveness demonstrated the value of merit-based evaluation over social stereotypes. Washington's technical discussions with Staff Sergeant O'Brien and other specialists revealed knowledge and experience that commanded professional respect across racial boundaries. His systematic approach to equipment maintenance and tactical planning demonstrated competence that earned recognition from career military personnel. The broader tactical situation in the Vosges Mountains improved significantly through continued counter-sniper operations that maintained American freedom of action while constraining German coordination capabilities. This sustained advantage enabled more aggressive operations that advanced broader strategic objectives. Divisional attention to the regiment's counter-sniper success created opportunities for Washington's recognition and advancement while generating pressure for replication of these capabilities across other units. However, the racial dynamics of personnel assignment remained complex obstacles to systematic development of individual merit. Intelligence reports indicated that German commanders were requesting additional specialist personnel to address American counter-sniper capabilities, resource allocation that represented tactical success beyond immediate engagement results. This strategic impact validated the importance of individual excellence within broader military operations. Washington's performance over several days established his reputation as an exceptional marksman whose capabilities exceeded those of traditional specialists. This recognition created opportunities for advancement while challenging institutional assumptions about racial capabilities and military competence. The damage scope continued functioning effectively throughout multiple days of intensive use, validating Washington's repair work and technical understanding of optical systems. This sustained performance provided confidence for continued operations while demonstrating capabilities that extended beyond conventional military training. As the week progressed, Washington's tactical impact became increasingly clear through sustained German defensive modifications and resource reallocations directed toward counter-sniper protection. These enemy responses indicated strategic effects that justified continued investment in individual excellence and specialized capabilities. Major Harrison's final reports to divisional headquarters acknowledged Washington's exceptional contribution to tactical success while recommending continued utilization of his capabilities despite institutional complications. This recognition represented significant evolution in command attitudes, though racial barriers remained substantial obstacles to full advancement. The morning's events had begun with skepticism about providing damaged equipment to an African-American soldier who had requested specialized training. Within hours, exceptional performance had challenged fundamental assumptions about capability, merit, and the relationship between social prejudices and military effectiveness. Washington's success with supposedly defective equipment demonstrated that individual competence could overcome institutional limitations when military necessity created opportunities for performance. His technical knowledge, professional discipline, and sustained accuracy provided tactical advantages that exceeded anything achieved through conventional approaches. The broader implications extended beyond individual recognition to questions about military organization, personnel utilization, and the relationship between social attitudes and operational effectiveness. Washington's performance suggested that institutional barriers might prevent optimal utilization of available capabilities, limiting military effectiveness through prejudice rather than merit-based evaluation. Captain Fletcher's evolving recognition of Washington's capabilities represented the kind of professional development that military effectiveness ultimately required. His willingness to advocate for merit-based advancement, despite social complications, demonstrated leadership that prioritized tactical success over institutional convenience. The tactical advantages achieved through Washington's individual excellence provided measurable improvement in regimental operations while creating strategic effects that influenced enemy resource allocation and tactical planning. This impact demonstrated the military value of identifying and developing exceptional individual capabilities regardless of social background. Staff Sergeant O'Brien's professional respect for Washington's technical competence illustrated how shared expertise could overcome racial barriers when military effectiveness created common ground. Their technical discussions about equipment and tactics demonstrated collaborative potential that institutional policies often prevented. Washington's systematic approach to optical repair, ballistic calculation, and tactical planning reflected civilian experience and educational background that military classification had failed to recognize or utilize effectively. His surveying knowledge provided capabilities that conventional training might not have developed, suggesting the value of diverse professional backgrounds within military operations. The damage scope's continued functionality validated Washington's understanding of optical mechanical systems, while providing symbolic representation of his ability to achieve success despite institutional limitations. His repair work demonstrated technical competence that commanded professional respect across racial boundaries. German tactical responses to continued accurate American shooting confirmed the strategic impact of individual excellence within broader operations. Enemy resource reallocation and defensive modifications indicated effects that extended beyond immediate engagement results to influence tactical planning and operational capabilities. The week's events established Washington as an exceptional military asset, whose capabilities warranted recognition and development despite institutional barriers that complicated advancement. His sustained performance under varying tactical conditions demonstrated reliability that justified continued utilization and potential expansion of responsibilities. Divisional interest in replicating the regiment's counter-sniper success created opportunities for Washington's recognition while generating pressure for systematic development of specialized capabilities across broader units. However, racial dynamics remained significant obstacles to official acknowledgement of individual contributions. The psychological impact on German personnel remained evident in their continued cautious movement patterns and reduced coordination activities. This sustained behavioral change indicated lasting effects from accurate American shooting while validating the importance of precision capabilities within broader tactical operations. Washington's professional development during the week included technical discussions with specialists, tactical planning participation, and equipment maintenance responsibilities that expanded his role beyond conventional assignments. This evolution demonstrated institutional adaptation to exceptional individual capabilities despite policy limitations. Major Harrison's evolving recognition of Washington's value represented significant command development, though personal prejudices remained obstacles to full appreciation of individual merit. His reports acknowledged tactical success while carefully managing racial implications that complicated official recognition. The broader strategic implications included German resource allocation directed toward counter-sniper defense and tactical modifications that reduced enemy operational freedom. These effects demonstrated how individual excellence could influence strategic outcomes through sustained tactical impact. As regimental operations continued, Washington's role evolved from individual marksman to tactical specialist, whose capabilities influenced planning and execution across broader operations. This development illustrated how exceptional performance could overcome institutional limitations through demonstrated military value. The morning that had begun with a damaged scope and skeptical commands had transformed into a week of tactical advantages that influenced strategic outcomes while challenging fundamental assumptions about capability and merit within military organization. Washington's exceptional performance provided measurable improvement in operational effectiveness while demonstrating the importance of individual excellence within broader military success. His story represented more than individual achievement. It illustrated the potential for merit-based evaluation to overcome institutional barriers when military necessity created opportunities for performance. The tactical advantages achieved through exceptional marksmanship validated the importance of identifying and developing individual capabilities regardless of social background or institutional assumptions. The damaged scope that had been reluctantly provided as a token gesture had become the instrument through which Washington demonstrated capabilities that exceeded those of conventional specialists. His technical knowledge, professional discipline, and sustained accuracy provided tactical advantages that influenced strategic outcomes while commanding respect across racial boundaries. Captain Fletcher's advocacy for merit-based advancement represented leadership development that prioritized military effectiveness over institutional convenience. His recognition of Washington's capabilities illustrated how professional competence could overcome social prejudices when tactical success created common ground. The week's tactical success demonstrated the military value of diverse professional backgrounds and educational experiences that conventional classification might fail to recognize. Washington's surveying knowledge provided capabilities that enhanced military effectiveness while suggesting opportunities for better utilization of available human resources. German strategic responses to American counter-sniper capabilities confirmed the broader impact of individual excellence within military operations. Enemy resource reallocation and tactical modifications indicated effects that extended beyond immediate engagement results to influence strategic planning and operational effectiveness. Washington's sustained performance under varying conditions established his reputation as a reliable tactical asset whose capabilities warranted continued development despite institutional barriers. His professional evolution demonstrated how exceptional individual merit could overcome organizational limitations through demonstrated value. The psychological impact on enemy personnel provided lasting tactical advantage through modified behavior patterns and reduced operational coordination. This sustained effect validated the importance of precision capabilities while demonstrating how individual excellence could influence broader tactical outcomes. Major Harrison's gradual recognition of Washington's value represented institutional adaptation to exceptional performance, despite personal and policy limitations. His evolving reports reflected growing understanding of merit-based evaluation while acknowledging the complexity of racial integration within military effectiveness. The divisional attention generated by regimental success created opportunities for Washington's broader recognition while establishing precedent for merit-based advancement despite institutional complications. This attention validated exceptional performance while creating pressure for systematic development of specialized capabilities. As winter operations continued in the Vosges Mountains, Washington's tactical contributions became integral to regimental planning and execution. His capabilities influenced strategic thinking while providing measurable advantages that justified continued investment in individual excellence despite social and institutional barriers. The morning's events had demonstrated that exceptional performance could challenge fundamental assumptions about capability and merit within military organization. Washington's success with damaged equipment provided tactical advantages that influenced strategic outcomes while commanding professional respect across racial boundaries. His story illustrated the potential for individual excellence to overcome institutional limitations when military necessity created opportunities for performance. The tactical success achieved through precision marksmanship validated the importance of merit-based evaluation while demonstrating the military value of diverse professional backgrounds and educational experiences. The damaged scope had become a symbol of institutional limitations overcome through individual competence and professional excellence. Washington's repair work and sustained performance demonstrated technical capabilities that commanded respect while providing tactical advantages that influenced strategic outcomes. The week's developments represented more than individual achievement. They illustrated fundamental questions about military organization, personnel utilization, and the relationship between social attitudes and operational effectiveness. Washington's exceptional performance suggested that institutional barriers might prevent optimal utilization of available capabilities, limiting military effectiveness through prejudice rather than merit-based evaluation. Captain Fletcher's leadership development through recognition of Washington's capabilities demonstrated how professional competence could overcome social prejudices when military effectiveness created common ground. His advocacy for merit-based advancement represented evolution in command thinking that prioritized tactical success over institutional convenience. The sustained tactical advantages achieved through individual marksmanship provided measurable improvement in regimental operations while creating strategic effects that influenced enemy resource allocation and tactical planning. This impact validated the military value of identifying and developing exceptional individual capabilities, regardless of social background or institutional assumptions. Staff Sergeant O'Brien's professional collaboration with Washington illustrated how technical expertise could overcome racial barriers when military effectiveness created opportunities for shared learning and mutual respect. Their discussions about equipment and tactics demonstrated collaborative potential that institutional policies often prevented. Washington's systematic approach to tactical challenges reflected civilian experience and professional discipline that enhanced military effectiveness while suggesting the value of diverse backgrounds within specialized operations. His surveying knowledge provided capabilities that conventional training might not have developed, demonstrating the importance of recognizing and utilizing available human resources. The psychological impact on German personnel provided lasting tactical advantage through sustained behavioral changes that reduced enemy coordination and operational effectiveness. This effect demonstrated how individual excellence could influence broader tactical outcomes through precision capability and professional execution. Divisional recognition of regimental success created precedent for merit-based advancement despite institutional complications while generating pressure for systematic development of specialized capabilities across broader units. This attention validated exceptional performance while creating opportunities for Washington's continued professional development. As operations continued, Washington's role evolved from individual specialist to tactical advisor, whose capabilities influenced planning and execution across regimental activities. This development illustrated how exceptional performance could overcome institutional limitations through demonstrated military value and professional competence. The morning that had begun with skepticism about damaged equipment had transformed into recognition of exceptional capability that influenced tactical outcomes while challenging fundamental assumptions about merit and performance within military organization. Washington's achievement represented individual excellence that provided measurable military advantage while demonstrating the importance of professional evaluation over social prejudice. And that concludes our story. If you made it this far, please share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this historical account surprised you most? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II, and check out the video on screen for another incredible tale from history. Until next time.